Hey everybody, what's good? Welcome back to the Pod with Purpose. My name is Josh Hancock.
And I'm Hayden Ferguson. And today our purpose is directed towards the world of college sports. And we're going to be looking into how anti-racism can be advanced in the National Collegiate Athletic Association, better known as the NCAA.
So to start this week's episode, we're going to play an audio clip from a Texas news source that talks to the players firsthand to hear their opinion on the state of racism in the United States.
It makes you feel small because it's easy to say, oh, I feel so little. I feel like what I'm doing is not making any change. It's not, I'm doing this, and then I turn around and I look in the news and somebody got shot 7 times in the back, you know? So it's like it makes you feel small, but you got to keep acknowledging the little things you are doing, the little changes you're making, and just keep moving forward.
These are powerful words from a Texas football player that unfortunately we weren't able to find his name of, but this doesn't take away the power of his words. He ended with saying, keep moving forward. And this is undoubtedly one of the most important parts of anti-racism.
Yeah, exactly that, Hayden. I think the idea of taking steps of progression can either be big or small. No matter how big the steps are, they are steps forward. And it's important to think about what the NCAA are doing to protect these athletes and to support these athletes who are going through this.
And as us students at East Tennessee State University have all seen this year that the racial injustices that have happened to the ETSU basketball team, it's obvious that racism in college sports is worth talking about. Don't let the presumably forced resignation of Coach Jason Shea go unnoticed.
Exactly right, Hayden. College sports are a great place for people to come together and compete. These sports are open to people of all races. However, racism can be lurking in the most hidden of ways, and this is a prime example. To help battle racial injustices that are present, last summer the NCAA devised a plan to advance racial equity within their sports organization.
And we're now going to play a clip from the NCAA of Nia Blair Heckworth reading this 8-step plan. Just wanted to say that Nia is a director in the NCAA's Office of Inclusion. Here it is.
These are 8 things that we're doing to address racial justice. The first thing is we're conducting and hosting programs for the national office staff as well as for the membership. A few weeks ago, we had a national office program where we talked about what does it mean to have an anti-racist workplace. We have had several webinars for the membership that I'll talk about a little bit later at the Office of Inclusion that we held. And we're looking to continue to do more. Right? We're reviewing our policies and procedures for inclusive language. We're also implementing unconscious bias for all of our national office staff, as well as new employees when we get a chance to hire them. We're engaging and providing service to the local community. And we're looking to enact a consortium with external organizations, business, and associations to develop solutions and actionable efforts to address the issues of racism in society. We're also reviewing initial eligibility requirements, looking at the SAT and the ACT. And additionally, we were reviewing the NCAA academic progress rate and its impact on historically Black colleges and universities, as well as other limited resource schools. And we're working with the coaches associations to seek student athlete input and participation in changes to conference level and national level rules and policies.
So first things first, after listening to this anti-racism plan, our immediate reactions were one of positivity. Actually listening and hearing this director talk about these issues and what they have in place to move forward and make change is really positive. And I know Hayden has some stuff to touch on here that he's going to talk about now.
Yes, and to be honest, I don't know about you, Josh, but I was a little bit surprised when I first found out that because of the other racism that we've explained and witnessed in college sports, that I was a little bit surprised that the NCAA had an anti-racist policy plan in place. So I just really want to compliment them for addressing this issue. And I know the first 3 rules, it's great that they're looking within first. So rule number 2 is that they're willing to review policies and want to implement more inclusive language. And that's great that they know that racism is from the past can linger in the present and future.
Exactly. But I think that leads on to what the main problem of this plan is. And one thing that we established early on is that this plan is lacking measurability and clarity on how and when these goals will be achieved.
Yep.
There is very little extra bullet points explaining these measures or explaining these goals and how these will be achieved. And essentially, to make change, you have to be able to evaluate change and see how far you have come and whether the goals are being met. And as I look through the plan, there are some points I wanted to touch on. So point number one about conducting and hosting programming for national office staff and the membership. But how many programming sessions? What is the membership and who will be included? These are kind of questions that me and Hayden are having as we look and examine this program and this platform that they have created to make change.
And that's a great point, because as I'm looking at these rules with you, and they are seeming from what I see a little bit vague. And I don't know.
Yeah,
that's what you're getting at.
100%. And are these programs being held by diverse leaders to say their point of view and coming from a background where they have different perspectives to people who are privileged in society? And furthermore, I'd like to touch on the work with the Coaches Association to seek athlete input and participation in changes to the conference and national rules and policies. But how are these coaches, they're seeking input of the student athletes, but what are the coaches receiving in terms of education? I know this is a question you had as well, Hayden, about, how are the coaches receiving this education and moving forward and making change to their student athletes? They're being asked to seek student athlete input, but what input are the coaches seeking?
Yeah, and the coach is such an integral part of any sports team that it's a direct connection between each player. Like, the players have their own connections, but each player has a relationship with their coach. So the training that these coaches are receiving is important, because they pass it on to their players, which then it's a system. It flows from person to person, and that's why this training of the coaches, we want to make sure that it's helpful and affects and incites anti-racist change.
100%. And I'd just like to touch on number 4 about engaging and providing service to the local community. I thought this was the most vague out of all of them. This goal needs to be 100% more specific. What is local? Is local around where the headquarters of the NCAA are? Is local around each institution within the NCAA? How far is local? And there should be bullet points addressing each step in how this will be achieved and what exactly they mean by engage and provide service. So we are essentially calling for the NCAA to review and adapt these anti-racism plans to make these goals more measurable so they can directly impact people of colour. Because simply writing this down isn't going to make change. It's one of the small steps that they've taken, but in order to progress, they need to be more measurable, and so they can look back and see progression, and they can be held accountable to holding to these standards.
So from this, it's evident that this plan needs to be more specific. We're saying we need to see time frames, because these plans were set in place last summer, and it's not clear when these are being conducted. So we definitely need to see dates. We want to see numbers. So how many people are receiving this training? Like I said, rule number 3 says unconscious bias training for all national office staff. And is this also going to the athletic departments of each school, like the athletic directors? And the people who have real power in the NCAA and college sports world are the people in those offices. And that's often where the racism lingers. So we want to make sure that people like that are receiving anti-racist training. But we just really want to see that these goals are more measurable through dates and numbers.
Yeah, I think exactly that, Hayden. Dates and numbers are a big way to have measurability in these goals. I think bullet points as well underneath each goal, explaining the small little steps that each one will take in order for it to be achieved. I think that's a great step forward. But essentially, we need to see some clarity. We need to see some evaluation of how these goals will be met and how these goals will be achieved. Because, as I said earlier, simply writing these down is not going to achieve anything. But in fact, it's a step forward in the right direction.
And I really like how you said steps, because that's something that seemed to come up a lot in this conversation.
Yeah, no, 100%. I completely agree. But these steps need to be more measurable. It's all good making steps in the right direction, but there needs to be more clarity, and that is what we are calling for.
Mm-hmm. And it's our job, like the Texas football player said, to make sure these steps keep going. We don't want to stop on the walk of anti-racism. We want it to keep moving forward. Once again, we want to call attention to the integral importance of anti-racism in college sports, because these athletes' lives extend beyond the court, the field, the TV that you're watching. These are people.
As we conclude and wrap up this podcast, we hope you have taken something from this. In reaction to learning about the news of what happened at ETSU's basketball team, we wanted to really research what the NCAA were doing in order to enact change. And as we said at the beginning of this podcast, we were pleasantly surprised to come across this anti-racism plan. But these goals need to be more measurable. They need to have more clarity. Ultimately, with anti-racism change, we can continue to dismantle racism step by step. This has been your pod with purpose. Thank you for listening.